Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the 6-inch modern ThunderCats Mumm-Ra from Bandai. Moving right along with my look at the 6-inch modern ThunderCats figures, it's time to take a look at the arch nemesis to the ThunderCats, Mumm-Ra, the Ever-Living. Mumm-Ra comes in the standard 6-inch figure blister card packaging, featuring the blue theme present on all of the modern ThunderCat toys packages. The bottom corner sports some awesome artwork for Mumm-Ra. So one thing to note about Mumm-Ra right away is his size. Though this figure is in the 6-inch scale, Mumm-Ra actually stands a bit taller than the rest of the figures. He actually towers over Lion-O. This is a really cool move by Bandai. Mumm-Ra is presented as being much larger than everyone else in the cartoon, so I like that the figure here is close to scale. Mumm-Ra does have an interesting build this time around. His arms are large and very long. He's kind of got that monkey arms thing going on. On top of that, his legs are much thinner than his upper body and a little stubby. And his head is really small in comparison to his broad shoulders. This is cartoon accurate though, so it's not really a fault of the toy design or anything like that. Now the figure does sport that same shiny plastic used on many of the other ThunderCats figures. It seems to be a staple for Bandai. Also, he suffers from the same exposed black pegs and screws just as Lion-O did. There aren't as many of them showing, though, on Mumm-Ra, but there are still enough for it to be annoying. Alright, it's time to take a closer look at Mumm-Ra. Now, the first thing I want to address is Mumm-Ra's headdress. When you get him out of the package, you actually do have to assemble him a little bit. You can see he's got these white bandages hanging out from underneath his headdress there. And then he's also got the flowing red ribbon type pieces coming off the back. All of that you actually have to put on the figure. So you can see the helmet is actually removable, which actually makes his head look even smaller than it did before. He's got this tiny little pinhead. So the helmet comes right off. There's a little peg on top of the head which holds onto it. Now these little bandage pieces have small little pegs, and you can see that there's little pegs on each side of his head. So you actually have to plug these on yourself, which just fit onto the side of the head just like that. Look like his big long sad puppy dog ears coming off the side of his head. And then you've got the red ribbon part that comes off the back, the tassels. This is actually a pretty solid piece of plastic. You notice there's not a whole lot of pliability here. And it's ridged so that it fits just right along the rim of his head right here. So you just pop that on, and then you add the helmet on, and that is meant to hold it all in place. So it's an interesting setup. I'm not sure why the design was done in that particular way. And one thing to note is that those red ribbons, I said that the tassels here were made of a rigid plastic, so they do just stick straight out. They're kind of flowing, so it looks like they're wind-blown, but they're permanently blowing in the wind. I mean, they're not going to do anything but just stand there just like that. So, and they do kind of get in the way sometimes, and it's real easy to knock his helmet off, so it's an interesting design to be sure. Alright, now the articulation on Mumm-Ra is just like pretty much what we saw with the Lion-O figure that we looked at last time. He's got the ball-jointed shoulders with the bicep cuts. The elbows aren't double-jointed, but they are regular joints. He rotates just above the glove area and then also at the wrist. There is no torso cut articulation on this one. I guess this is because they wanted to really, show Mumm-Ra's bigger, beefier chest because he's a big guy. But he does have the waist cut. And then his pauldron piece at the bottom down here, it is a little looser, so it does move a little bit with the legs, but you can see it will hinder the leg movement going side to side. However, you do still have the cuts in the thighs. You've got double jointed knees. You've got boot cuts. And you have ankle joints. So there's a lot of posability options here. Now, my Mumm-Ra is real loose in the knees and the ankles. And with his big, heavy upper body and his large arms, he does have a tendency to buckle at the knees and ankles quite a bit and topple over. So that is something worth noting for sure. I don't know if this is something that's only plaguing my particular Mumm-Ra or if this is something that's seen across the board. But it is something to be weary of. Also, because his upper body is so much bigger than his lower body, you are going to have balancing issues sometimes. So hopefully a lot of the joints on a lot of the figures will be tighter at the ankles because that'll help a ton in getting them balanced. As it is, mine, you do kind of have to mess with a little bit to get them standing, but still, good amount of articulation for this particular figure. Mumm-Ra includes a pair of interchangeable hands. They can easily pop right off the ball pegs and hold very firmly when attached. This allows you to display Mumm-Ra with either open hands or with more closed hands meant for holding accessories. Speaking of accessories, Mumm-Ra includes the double-bladed Sword of Plundar. The sword can actually detach in the middle, but I believe this is just to help get the sword into Mumm-Ra's hands. I think this is the only purpose for that because the handle isn't even attached to the part of the sword that you'd want him to hold if he was holding just one sword. So I guess it's only really meant to be a double-bladed sword. Only problem is it's kind of hard to get him to hold it two-handed, so you're really left only having him hold it with one of his hands. Mumm-Ra also includes his own gauntlet. Now, unlike Lion-O's, this one is much larger, and it has really long tendril-like claws coming off the front of it. Also, unlike Lion-O's, this one does not work by detaching Mumm-Ra's hand and putting it in its place. This one merely has a clip on the bottom that can snap right onto either of Mumm-Ra's forearms. Alright guys, it's comparison time! Here's Mumm-Ra standing alongside his vintage counterpart from LJN, so you can see the difference between the two designs. And here he is alongside the 6-inch Classics version of Mumm-Ra from Bandai. And finally, here's a look at him next to the 4-inch version of the same design. Of course, the 4-inch figure features those large bat wings that are not present on this 6-inch figure. Now, the 6-inch figures based on this modern ThunderCats cartoon series are actually pretty good so far. While I don't like Mumm-Ra here as much as I did Lion-O, I do still think the figure is pretty cool. Of course, I still have the same complaints as always. The shiny plastic feels a bit cheap, and those black pegs in the joints are an eyesore. But the overall design of the figure is pretty good. I'm not real fond of Mumm-Ra's pinhead and monkey arms, but that's more the fault of the new character's design and not the action figure itself. The 6-inch modern ThunderCats line is in stores right now, so happy hunting, and until next time.